Right now, joining us live from Spain, no stranger to the show. He's out there with his family, and they've started a new life, a journey that many here in North America are thinking about doing with their kids. Joining us from making better players, he's their manager, Georgios Sarakinis. Georgios, welcome.
Thank you, Anthony. Thanks for having me on the show.
Pleasure's all mine. Georgios, appreciate you joining us on short notice, but something that really is stuck in me all weekend long that I wanted to talk to you about, and we're going to also talk to Coach Reed Maltby a little bit later after you, was how important it is to get parent education up and going much more than we've done in the past. We continuously talk about coach education, player education, but I think a lot of times we forget parent education. Watching an under 10 boys game this weekend as I was getting ready to watch a semi-pro game at League One Ontario at a field adjacent to it, all I kept hearing was a group of parents yelling, some even swearing at their kids, getting mad at the opposition coach, at the ref, on, and I'm shaking my head thinking to myself, wow, I know I did a little bit of this with my first son, but I completely stopped with the second one because I learned better from it. You now in Spain, you've got the taste of both worlds. You spent time here in Canada, you spent time there in Spain. Give us the pros and cons of both.
Well, I think in terms of parent education, and especially in North America, where sports is basically you're paying, or the parents are paying to play, many parents don't understand the sport, have their kids involved in the sport for various reasons. But we need to do a better job educating these parents because they are the ones paying the bills for these kids to play. We need to have them sort of understand what the sport is about, what the coaches are doing, what the coaches are working on. And if you give the example this weekend where you sat on a sideline at an under 10 game, we see it at under 4 house league games. Parents are yelling, parents are screaming. Parents want, the best for their child, but yelling and screaming at the child or the referee or the coach is always not the best, obviously, for that player and for their child. And then if I look to Spain, to be honest, a lot of parent education is not done here. I think many just assume this is a footballing nation. Parents know everything about football. If I want to compare it to Canada, and everybody should know a little bit about hockey being, Canada's sport. At our club, we actually run an academy too, MBP Ozona. We actually we have a monthly meeting with all the parents to go over what we're going to be working on during the month, what our concepts are in each of the age groups. So we make them feel like the experience, or they're involved in the experience as well, and they can reinforce what we're teaching and what we're working on.
Georgios, how important is it that the club president, the president of the local youth academy sits down with all the parents before the season kicks off and says, here's how we're going to do things, and if you don't like it, too bad. I need you to sign this form saying you're going to abide by the rules and what we're asking you to do. If not, then this is not the place for you. I think this is vitally important because it comes from the top of the club or the academy.
Well, I think it's very important that whether it's the president, the technical director, or a bunch of representatives from the club doing this, where parents are signing. But what I think is even more important is to have follow-up meetings, whether it's a month from now, 2 months from now, whatever those dates are, that they're scheduled throughout the year to sort of go over what was said at the beginning of the year, to sort of field any concerns from parents, what they may have, to have a technical director speak to them, what's going on, and also coaches to speak to parents on a regular basis, whether that's scheduled meetings every few months, to update the parent how their child is doing, what they need to improve on. The constant communication has to go sort of back and forth both ways throughout the season, I think.
Georgios, we're talking about, parent education, and to me, one of the most toxic, poisonous environments on a team is when you have a parent there that is a former pro, that a lot of other parents gravitate to, pick that parent's brain, and that former pro, hopefully for the most part, will say, no, I trust the coach, I believe in what he's doing, I'm going to leave him alone. But in some cases, you get that former player saying he's doing this wrong, he's doing that wrong, and I think this is toxic and poisonous in that environment. Do you agree?
Well, I agree. Like you said, there are pros that, were great players and are great coaches, and there's pros that were great players and not the best of coaches. But again, I think it goes back to the coaching, the coaches, the staff, the president of the club with these meetings throughout the season And not only that, the parents need to know what these kids are working on, what they need to know, or what they need to sort of have in their repertoire, what's part of their curriculum. They need to know what's happening within their club, with their child, to have these goals like they do in school with report cards or evaluations, whether they're written or just verbally coach and parent and player. That, I think, goes a long way in sort of nipping the things that go behind the scenes with parents talking about the coach and the rest of it. It has to be all throughout the year, and parents need to know what they're paying for.
I also find very toxic and very poisonous is when you get a group of parents, that clique, a group of parents that have decided this is not the coach for my son. This is not the club for my son. And you get 4 or 5 of them, and all of a sudden they decide to bolt at the end of the season, sometimes in the middle of the season, and it puts a lot of distraction within that team, issues moving forward, on and on and on. And I think this needs to be discussed too, where you can't have cliques and different groups of parents saying, we love the coach, or we hate the coach, or we're in between, Georgios.
Well, you're 100% right when you see that all the time, where you do have those 4 or 5 parents that sort of bond together and say, you know what, this coach is not doing a good job, we should go somewhere else. But then it's the other club who actually takes the team or takes the players, sometimes takes the coach with them. So we have to stop, these 4 or 5 going from one club to the other, because there's always a club that's going to take these 4 or 5 players because they're in need of players. Maybe they're the best 4 players, and so we have to do a better job, even the other club who's receiving these players, because a lot of times these 4 or 5 will go to 4 or 5 teams within 4 or 5 years. So it doesn't just stop, it continues to go.
Parent education, to me, involves a lot of different areas, a lot of different issues, Georgios. Another issue to me is simply this, is in North America, you know this, I know this, everyone has busy lives, moms and dads work, and they try to help one another to carpool, which is great. But where you find is some, again, decide that, hey, I'm coming when I can come, and that's the best I can do. And then when you see the other players and parents busting their butt and getting there on time, and the so-called maybe star player on that team gets there when they want, that's a big problem in my mind, and I witnessed and saw that many a time over and over again. That's part of parent education, where you tell them, look, everyone is treated equally, star or not, everyone needs to arrive on time, everyone needs to do X, Y, Z according to our plan.
I 100% agree with you, and I think part of the problem is parent education. I think a big part of the problem is the federations, the associations, who have, in my opinion, have not defined what, let's say, rep soccer is supposed to look like. When we talk about rep hockey, everybody knows they play hockey, and I'm not saying this is correct, but 27 out of 30 days a month, which is overload. When they go to a game, they're there an hour with their suit and tie, ready to go. They don't miss training. It's a requirement. Everybody knows they need to be at every practice for hockey, every game for hockey. They can't go on holidays. And again, I'm not condoning what hockey does, but I think there needs to be a standard placed for all soccer clubs. And, if rep soccer is 3 times a week in one game, then it's mandatory, and I think it needs to be enforced. And if that means, in my opinion, numbers go down because people are not respecting the game, I think that's where you got to go. Start at the bottom and build a proper foundation and build from there.
You use the word respect. Let's talk about that when it comes to the abuse that refs take a lot at the grassroots level, a lot at the young ages. And these refs, for the most part, make absolute peanuts for any payment in what they do. They take a ton of abuse on, and we see it all over North America. I'm sure you see it in Europe, where parents feel that, hey, I had a rough day at the office, I had a rough day at my work, I'm going to take it out here on this young ref or this mature ref on that bad call they made, and I'm going to let them know how I feel. How important is it that, again, the club steps in, the president, the head coach, the technical director, and says, no, we're not going to do this. There's going to be one voice and one only that expresses any, disgust, or if any at all, that needs to be directed towards the ref.
Yeah, we can do all the parent education. We can have all the meetings with presidents and TDs and coaches. But at the end of the day, when this is happening, it's usually at the game, where it's only the coach and maybe his assistant coach. that coach has to step in and, whether he speaks to the ref and say, listen, we need to stop the game for 2 minutes, and I need to speak to my parents to get this going, because you're right, it affects the kids, and that's what's most important, the referee and the kids. And sometimes these kids are really young and they're just starting out and they're 12, 13, 14 years old, and after that game, that's the last time they're going to be refereeing. One thing they've done here is they've created a program called Zero Insults, and the referee has the power, if he hears something, first time, he stops the game. They go in the dressing room, it's 5 minutes, they come back out. They do it again, it's 10 minutes, they come back out, and you can see where this is going. I think it's after 2 times the game is abandoned. Even if it's something really small and it's, bothered the referee, he takes them in, and, for the most part it's worked. I haven't seen any game. There's still the occasional people are still yelling, but I think it will, the coach at the game needs to do something about it. If he's condoning it by not doing anything, then he's allowed this to happen.
Well, I love that. I love that they go back to the dressing room. That's outstanding. I wish we could implement something like that here. Let's talk about another issue that I'm sure you've witnessed. If not, I've witnessed it time and time again with my 2 sons in the system over the years, where a parent is not happy. I've been a parent that's not happy with a couple, I should say more than a couple clowns as coaches for my son in the past. And I've had to cool off. I've had to keep it in check. And I tell you, it was hard to keep that 24-hour, in check inside of me. But after 24 hours were over, I made that coach understand I wasn't happy about this, and that. But you see a lot of parents going right to the car of that coach, right into the grill house right after the game is over and saying, you didn't play my son, you didn't play my daughter, shame on you, they didn't take the free kick or penalty kick, or they didn't start, and go on and on. That to me has to be discussed in parent education as well.
Well, of course, everything, like you said, the whole topic is parent education and them understanding, 1, the game, 2, how parents should condone themselves, how a coach should react or not react to these parents. But it's imperative that we sort of build this respect between parent-coach, parent-club, and so on, because as you know, you've been in the game for a long time. You had kids who played in the game. I've been in the game. I've had kids who play in the game, and it continues to be the same thing. And at times I feel, as much as we're educating, it seems it's getting worse. And, you hear stories of violence at games and parents going at it. The 24-hour rule is good, as long as, a coach doesn't bark back and say, listen, I need to speak to you tomorrow, respect the 24 hours. Sometimes it's difficult, and they may say something that provokes you to want to say something. But again, it goes back to the coach honoring and the parent honoring what they've discussed, in the previous meeting, and trying to at least wait a bit of time, to speak about what has transpired. But yeah, everybody gets angry, and all of us parents are not always happy with coaches. But if you have respect for a coach and they have respect back for you, then it should be, be able to wait that 24 hours. This happens.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Georgios. Last point is this, and then we'll let you go. Really appreciate your time. I've been privy to some of these conversations amongst these so-called cliques or groups of parents throughout the years with my kids, and it still churns my stomach to think that I would let my ears hear some of this garbage by some of the parents. And what I'm talking about is this, Georgios. A lot of the parents would dissect the players on their team and saying, little Johnny is getting more playing time than my little Bobby. And why? He doesn't run as quick, or he doesn't have that great left foot, or he's small, he's short, he's tall, on and on and on. This crap, this garbage of a lot of these parents cutting up kids on their own, players on their own kids' team, it's revolting, it's upsetting, and I heard so many conversations like, why are you guys talking like this? And they're like, does the coach not see what we're seeing? Why is he playing this kid in this position? Why is he starting him? And I think that is so it's crazy, Georgios.
It is crazy, and I think a lot of it has to do with every team has that initial meeting, coaches and parents, and then there really isn't anything until the end of the season, and things just get, they brew and they brew and they brew throughout the whole season. Parents are wondering why Johnny is playing over Bobby. If the coach has made it a goal for him to take care of each child and to meet with parents to update where they need improvement, what they're doing well, where they see them, in 3 months, what their goals should be. If you have that constant communication with the child, and I know parents are still going to compare Johnny with Bobby because that's human nature, but parents really need to realize that what's best is, what's best for their child and how they improve, and not so much how Bobby or Johnny or Phil improve. It's how they're going to improve, what the coach is going to do, what the coach is going to say, how that coach is going to help them improve. And I think it does take a lot of education. And, my wife and I go back on this because I'm usually the more calm one, and she'll say little Bobby and little Johnny. But at the end of the day, what's most important is your own child.
Bang on, Georgios. All I ever said to a lot of those parents in those times were, all I care about is my son. Today, tomorrow, all I care about is my son, because I'm going home with my son. I'm eating dinner with my son. I'm spending time with my son. I don't care about Johnny, Bobby, Billy, how they're playing, if they're not good enough, whatever. I care about my son. Well said, Georgios. Listen, we really appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your day out there in the beautiful country of Spain, and hopefully we'll see you back here in Ontario and in Canada in the summer so we can have you live here in studio, my friend.
Thank you, Anthony, and have a good day.